My latest novel, The Death of the Author in Triplicate, has 3 sections, and each one is told from a different perspective. So the first one is first person perspective, the I, and it's a senior investigating officer or chief detective who's on his way to a crime scene of a fresh murder, and he's taking in sort of the neighbourhood and just trying to get a feel of the place, as he knows that he's going to have to sort of scan for objects at the crime scene that may or may not be material evidence. So he is literally a seeing eye. But he also has a subconscious which is working against him slightly, because it's the subconscious that's really delving to associate, to knit together these disparate things, these disparate objects, these disparate clues that perhaps on face value one wouldn't put together. But in the field of the context of the crime scene, maybe one does lead to another. So that's the first person. The second section is told in second person, the you. And it's the you of j'accuse, where 2 people are having a heated telephone conversation where they're arguing with one another. One is a widow and the other is a literary agent, and they're arguing over ownership of an unfinished manuscript of the widow's late husband, who was an author but also a policeman, and the literary agent. And the agent is arguing that in order to preserve the integrity of the work to date, that it needs a professional writer, a ghostwriter, to complete the project. And the wife isn't having any of that, because she reckons that he's not about the art and the artistry, he's about the money, the commerce. And she feels that she wants to sort of retain control over it in order to best preserve the memory of her husband, who to her was a great man, not just a great writer, but a great husband and a great policeman. And they're really arguing over the soul of this departed man. And the third section is of another writer, and that is the person who's written sections 1 and 2, and that is told in the third person. It's also told in the past tense, because the first section was very much the present tense of the detective walking through and literally seeing what was around him and reacting to them. This is told in the past tense for a couple of reasons. The characters of section 1 and section 2 don't exist. They're fictional creations of the author in section 3. He is not the star, he is not the driving force of the book. That is the characters in section 1 and the characters in section 2. So he very much is downgraded in sort of significance and importance by being treated as third person compared to the I and the yous of parts 1 and part 2. But in addition to that, there's this notion of how much of himself, because it's an author character, how much of himself is being revealed by his act of finishing writing parts 1 and part 2 and completing the novel. And he started to think ahead to marketing and interview questions that he's like to be asked, and his sort of literary archive, all the notes and things that went into the making of this book. And although he's in the third person, there is a further unseen, unwritten author behind him, which is of course me, the person who put the whole book together, parts 1, parts 2 and part 3. So although he is written as a he, and in the past tense that all this has already happened, it's a balancing act to try and work out how much of what is being said about the author in part 3 really reflects on me and my character, and how much of it is completely made up, is sort of creative fiction. So it's come full circle, because although the part 3 is in the third person, it's alluding to an I, which is me, the unseen author, the author who's not ostensibly in the book as in the form of a character, but is absolutely in the book, because all 3 of these sections have come from my imagination. So that's why the book is told from 3 different perspectives, which sort of spin one off another, and each one is stripping away what we take for granted or what we have fed from the previous section.